Of course, talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth, and we're here to look at these inside the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth videos. I don't know how many we're going to look at with this particular video. I don't even know what all's worth talking about from these videos, so that's something we'll have to figure out together, I guess. They did a similar series of videos with Remake, where they did inside Final Fantasy VII Remake with some of the dev teams and shit like that, and just kind of talking about all kinds of aspects of the game. The differences, though, with Remake, those came out kind of spread apart, like more or less like once a week or whatever, and they just kind of threw all the Rebirth videos out there for some reason, which I think is a little bit strange. Also, when it came to the Remake videos, there was 5 of them, and there's only 4 of these ones, and some of the Remake ones came out before the launch of the game, but those videos would have came out after the initial launch of the game. If the game had came out on March 3rd, then the Inside the Remake videos would have came out after launch, of course, but obviously the game got delayed till April 10th, so it's possible those videos were already in place, and maybe they just still wanted to release them on those particular times and dates or something. I don't entirely know, but these videos are coming out after Rebirth, obviously, so I don't know if they're going to be a little more like spoilery, so maybe that's why they saved them until after the game came out. Maybe they're going to talk a little more in depth about the game than what the Remake videos did. I don't know. So another kind of strange thing with the Rebirth videos versus the Remake videos is the first Rebirth videos on the PlayStation channel, and the other 3 videos are on the Square Enix channel, whereas with the Remake videos, they're all on the Final Fantasy channel, so who knows. All these videos are like 15 plus minutes, so with these longer kind of videos, we don't do like the reaction kind of content. I'll kind of watch it off camera, and we'll stop and talk about things that I think are worth talking about. So let's hop into episode 1. Maybe the first thing that's worth talking about is Hamaguchi talking about the world, kind of the world map, of course, when it comes to FF7 Rebirth, and how that was always something that he wanted to actualize when it came to the second game. That there just kind of had to be a world map, and that it was something that he wasn't willing to budge on from the very beginning. I'll pause there really quickly. Normally, I would play like the clips of them talking with the subtitles on the bottom. Here's the thing. The videos that are up on YouTube have closed captions on YouTube. They don't have actual subtitles on the video. So I had to download the videos. I had to then download the actual subtitles from YouTube themselves and like put it into VLC, convert the subtitle file into SRT, embed it into the video, save the video. So we have closed captions or subtitles on the videos, but it's not playing audio for some reason when I put it into editing software. When I put the video into VLC or play it through VLC, it works just fine. But for some reason, it's not having audio, so I can't play them with them actually talking with the subtitles. I'm not sure why. I don't know if I did something wrong. I've never really had to use VLC to like edit a video like that before. I've never done something like this. But we at least have the subtitles. We then have Nomura saying a somewhat similar thing to Hamaguchi about the importance of the world. That walking through the world of a Final Fantasy game is very important. They always kind of knew that they had to make a world like this for the next installment and have these kind of open world explorable elements. It's obviously something that the community was talking about for a long time leading up to the second part of the Remake project, is just that we needed a world map of some sort. It didn't necessarily matter what it was, whether it was like a true open world game or the wide linear big zones to explore, kind of what they have Rebirth being, just something like that. Something we had to have an explorable world essentially, just because Remake was so linear. It was a great game. I always say that every time we talk about something maybe negative with Remake, I want to reiterate that it is a great game. It's one of my favorite games ever. But it was so linear, so much more linear than we really thought it would be. They really had to open it up with the second game, and thankfully they did. We then have Kitase talking about the exploration elements of the game, and an example he gives is that you might be on a particular quest, going through a valley, but then there's like a hidden path that you might take that'll lead you to some ruins and things like that. Which is certainly true when it comes to Rebirth, but there is, something I gotta talk about with that. Well, it is certainly true that you can find hidden paths that might lead you to a little bit of treasure or something like that, or kind of a hidden area. You don't really find anything, so to speak. You might find, I don't know, at best maybe a materia or something, but it's not even usually that great of a materia that you'll find in a chest or something, right? A lot of the good shit you find are during important elements of the stories where you find a lot of the weapons, for example. The purple chests that have the weapons in them, you don't get those super, super often from side content. You certainly do in Rebirth here and there. But in terms of going off the beaten path or going down this trail that leads to a dead end where there might be some hidden content, it's crafting materials and basic shit in chests sometimes, man. There's just not really that. That's something I was hoping for with Rebirth that maybe they can fix in the third game, or we talked about before with the summons, right? I wanted to find a hidden cave somewhere and there's a summon materia in there, and that's rewarding for exploring. You're rewarded for exploring, right? And they didn't have that with this game. Of course, all the summons are fucking Chadley in this game. So it's something I hope that they could maybe fix with the third game, where it truly feels like you're exploring the world, and if you find this kind of hidden path that's off the beaten path, and this trail that leads winds around, leads to a cave somewhere, you find something actually fucking useful in that cave, right? As we talked about here on the channel, while there is like a lot of like open world elements and like a lot of things to do in the regions, it's kind of repetitive, right? You're just doing the same shit. You're all like the combat shit you do in every region is almost every single fight you do is like you gotta stagger an enemy, pressure him, beat him in the time limit. There's some that are a little bit different, right? But for the most part, that's every one of the fights you do. And then climbing the towers is mostly repetitive. Like in certain regions, like the Gongaga region or the Cosmic Canyon region, you got to find a way to get to the tower sometimes. But for the most part, you're just doing the same shit in every region, which that's not really fun, right? Like the summon shrines where you just gotta fucking hit the buttons in a sequence or whatever. Like those are I might have failed those like probably 2 to 3 times through my entire playthrough. I might have failed them like 2 or 3 times. They're not even complicated. They're nothing. Also, whenever you scan the crystals, it's just hitting the triangle button 3 times, and it just gets a little bit faster each time. Right? That's all it is. Like those aren't exciting, really. Right? They're just kind of nothing. So like I think they could definitely improve upon the open world elements when it comes to the third game for sure. We then have Hamaguchi talking about the playtime of the game, which is something we heard a lot about leading up to the actual game. They've been touting the 40 hours for the story, over 100 hours for the side content. And this has definitely remained true for those of us that have played the game. I'm probably, like I said, I think I finished my first playthrough at like 70-something hours. And that's me not even really trying to commit to all the side content that's in the game. And that's not even me touching the hard mode playthrough yet. So here we have Tetsuya talking about the minigames, but specifically they're talking about the gold saucer in the section. Then we have this woman come on who they said her name earlier in the video. It's like Takeko Miyaki, something like that. She's an environment director. They're talking about updating the game for the modern era. What this theme park would maybe look like these days as opposed to how cool it was supposed to look in the 90s with the older technology, right? Which is something I do kind of have a problem with to a certain degree when it comes to the remake project. I promise this isn't me trying to nitpick, which is what people say that I do, but it's just, it's how I feel about stuff. If I feel like a certain way, I'm going to talk about it. The technology is kind of weird when it comes to the remake project when you have something like Crisis Core. Like when you look at the original Crisis Core, but also Crisis Core Union, the technology is so dated because people are using flip phones, right? You see like Zach and everybody like using flip phones when they talk to people. But then you hop into like the remake project and everybody's on touchscreen smartphones, right? It's just something that's, part of me wishes that they tried to keep it like it was. I love the way the world looks for remake/rebirth. It would have been cool if they tried to keep it like older technology a little bit, just kind of to recapture that aspect of the original FF7. It's not the biggest deal. I love what they're doing with the remake project. It's just, part of me just wonders what the remake project would have been if they tried to keep it where like what seemed cool and futuristic in the 90s, if that makes any sense, right? And actually thinking of like the cell phone related shit, you have like flip phones and Advent Children, which they put in theaters again recently. And that's taking place after the remake project, supposedly, right? And it's like, so we have flip phones before remake. Once we get to the remake project, everybody's on smartphone touchscreens. And then once we get to Have the Children, everybody's back on flip phones. It's just weird. We then have the music guys, will say, talking about the music that plays in the Gold Saucer and that it's kind of iconic, so they didn't really change it too much, but they changed the way that it plays, apparently, where they have 3D audio in mind, so that it's kind of always playing from the ceiling above the player, and that just kind of depending on where you're at within the Gold Saucer, like the audio changes, like the further you're away from it, it plays a little bit quieter, things like that, which is pretty cool. I don't even know if I noticed this or not, but I don't often play with a headset on. I imagine if I played through my game with a headset on, I would notice things like that. I imagine I was also pretty enthralled with the spectacle of the Gold Saucer and Rebirth, that I was just kind of running around experiencing it, not really paying attention to the music. I was probably humming it, I imagine, because it's such an iconic track, but I don't think I was like paying that much attention to it. After that section, they talk about the lighting a little bit when it comes to Gold Saucer, which is kind of cool. It's not something we necessarily need to like break down or discuss. But then we get into Katasa, talk about the minigames, which we don't need to play either because we've talked about the minigames a lot. But it is something that it's kind of polarizing when it comes to Rebirth, is just the extensive amount of minigames. Pretty much when you get to any new region, there's bound to be a handful or more of just new minigames you have to learn the mechanics of. And some of them I think are fine for what they are, right? There's like in the Dust Bowl, the Desert Prison, whatever, there's like a kind of like a new iteration of like the Whack-A-Box or whatever. That's fine because I actually enjoyed that a little bit when it came to remake, and this is kind of a new iteration where there's a little more mechanics to it and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of fun. I know some people didn't like it. I actually really enjoyed that mini game. I think the card game is great. I think getting to play Fort Condor again was cool. Some people think that this Fort Condor is harder than the previous one, so on and so forth. It's just kind of polarizing. And then there's like the Gears and Gambits, which I'm kind of indifferent on. Like I completed the proto story for it, but I haven't gone through hard mode, which I know is going to be harder, obviously. The harder versions of it, whatever you want to say. And just the plethora of other mini games, man. Like the Cactuar one, where you got to fight the different Cactuars with like, magic or physical, that whole thing. I haven't done like the hard version of that either. I don't know. It's one of the polarizing things. There's some people that are going to enjoy all the mini games. Some people that it's not going to like any of them. I'm kind of in the middle where I don't mind them sometimes, but it's just when there's a new mini game all the time with brand new mechanics, I'm just like, ugh. I just want to progress the story. I just want to get through this quest. I don't want to do another minigame. Something for me I feel like they could maybe improve upon in the third game, or just dial back the minigames a bit. I don't know how much you get rid of. I don't know the ratio, whatever. It's just, I feel like there's just a little too much when it comes to Rebirth. The comparison I've seen people make, too, that's kind of funny, is 16, where there's like no minigames, and you get to Rebirth, and there's fucking too many minigames. And it's like, we need the middle ground there somewhere along the way, right? With the next installment of the remake project. So we have another section, them talking about the lighting. Specifically, they're talking about the Cosmo Canyon area here with like the sunset that kind of goes on there. It is a beautiful region. It's not my favorite region to explore necessarily, but it is a beautiful looking region. But they go into talking about the menus and how, like, depending on the time of day, the menus are different. Something I've been wanting to talk about, and I keep forgetting to talk about it. Something I noticed probably with like a TGS like gameplay, but also once we got the demos ourselves. I remember when I first like pulled up the menu and it was like nighttime and I'm exploring like Nibelheim with Cloud, going to the Shinra Manor, and seeing that it was also nighttime in the menu. Like, that blew my mind. It's such a cool, frankly unnecessary detail that they did not have to put in the game, and they did, and that's what I love about it. That just depending on the time of day, the menu looks different. If it's nighttime, it's going to be nighttime on the menu as you're looking through your character's gear and stats and shit. And I absolutely love that. I just love, that's such a cool idea that I don't think I've never seen in a game before that I can recall, man. That's just so interesting of a concept. Kind of piggybacking off of that, I think it'd be kind of cool, talking about the third game again here, if they introduce a night-day cycle to the project, because that we're talking about immersion here. That's one of the things they talk about with this section, is not one to break the character's immersion, but it is immersion breaking when there's not a night and day cycle to a certain degree, right? Again, not the biggest deal. I play plenty of games that don't have night-day cycles, but they're already kind of playing with the idea of this, time of day thing when it comes to the menus. I just think it'd be kind of cool. I'm a big fan of that in games. I think the first game I ever played that had a night-day cycle was Pokemon Gold, if I'm not mistaken. And that, as a kid playing that shit, absolutely mind-blowing. I'm playing the game at nighttime, laying in bed. It's fucking nighttime in the game. This is just the coolest shit ever. But also, we've had this with like the Final Fantasy franchise with obviously 15, and then you have like Dragon Quest 8, which is a Square Enix game, where there's a night-day cycle, but like the world's more dangerous at night. And I think it'd be kind of cool if they introduce something along those lines with the third game, where the world's different depending on the time of day. It'd be kind of cool that if you go to like a particular town, depending on the time of day, it's just there's different people out in the world, out in the streets, different conversations being had, different quests and things available to you depending on the time of day. I think it'd be kind of cool. We're gonna like continue the conversation of immersion and shit, and kind of like hidden secret content, that whole kind of discussion. Like, just like actual animals in the world, there'd be monsters that would only come out at night, right? That's when they would hunt or whatever the fuck. So it makes sense to have a 9-day cycle. There would only be particular monsters that come out at night, and maybe the more dangerous monsters come out at night. Kind of like Dragon Quest 8 and 15. Here we have Hamaguchi talking about what his favorite location is. Of course, he says he likes them all, because why would he not say that? But his actual favorite location, he doesn't give a reason why, is Junon, which we obviously got to talk about kind of briefly. I kind of joked briefly in the past about me and Hamaguchi being best friends, because he's like a big fan of like Witcher 3 and some other shit. We've agreed on certain things here and there, so we're best friends for that reason and that reason alone. But at one point, Junon was my favorite area in Rebirth as I got more through the game. I would say that maybe something like the Gongaga region is maybe my favorite, even though it's my least favorite to explore. It's aesthetically maybe my favorite, just because it also has like a post-apocalyptic feel. You come across like overgrown ruins and shit. Big fan of post-apocalyptic games. If we're talking overall with like aesthetics and exploration, then Junon might be my favorite, just because I love the way the area looks, and it's not confusing or annoying to explore, right? Having to bounce off the mushrooms, Gongaga is annoying. Having to fly around the Cosmo Canyon is kind of annoying. So Junon might be maybe my overall, if we're factoring in aesthetics and exploration. So I think that's pretty much it for episode 1. The video is a little bit longer than I thought it'd be, just because you never know with these kind of like interviews and shit. I go into them blind, so I don't know what else worth talking about. There's oftentimes, there'll be like a 20-minute video, but there's maybe like 5 minutes, if that, of things worth talking about, right? So I just didn't know how long the video is going to be. So if we were actually going to sit here and try to break down and talk about all 4 videos, this would be a really, really long video. I'd rather break it up. But also, now that I know that I have to go through and like download the video, download the subtitles, and do all that VLC shit to get the subtitles embedded and stuff, it's going to take a little while, because it takes a little while to process it in VLC. So the other episodes in the coming days, either tomorrow or the next day, we'll do episode 2, something along those lines. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @SaberYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.